The year was 1864, a pivotal moment in American history. The American Civil War raged on, tearing the nation apart. Families were divided, and the landscape of the country was forever changed. In Virginia, a small crossroads town called Cold Harbor became a battleground. This seemingly insignificant location would soon be etched into the annals of history. From May 31st to June 12th, Union and Confederate armies clashed in a brutal fight for control. The stakes were high, and both sides were determined to claim victory. The battle was a whirlwind of smoke, fire, and death. The fighting was fierce, with neither side willing to back down. The chaos of war enveloped the soldiers, making it difficult to distinguish friend from foe. Men fought hand to hand in the trenches. The close-quarters combat was brutal and unforgiving, with every inch of ground fiercely contested. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and the cries of the wounded. The battlefield was a scene of unimaginable horror, with soldiers desperately trying to survive amidst the carnage. By the time the guns fell silent, thousands lay dead on the battlefield. The ground was soaked with blood, and the cost of the battle was painfully evident. Cold Harbor was a Confederate victory. The Southern forces had managed to hold their ground, but the triumph was bittersweet. But it was a victory at a terrible cost. The human toll was staggering, and the battlefield was littered with the bodies of fallen soldiers. The human toll of the battle was staggering. Medical tents were filled with the wounded, and the rows of graves grew longer with each passing day. The ground was littered with bodies, both blue and grey. The aftermath of Cold Harbor was a somber reminder of the devastating cost of war, a scar on the land that would never fully heal. The sun beat down on the battlefield. The silence was broken only by the groans of the dying. The aftermath of Cold Harbor was a scene of unimaginable carnage. The ground was littered with bodies. Many were barely recognizable. The stench of death hung heavy in the air. The wounded cried out for help. Medics worked tirelessly, but they were overwhelmed. The sheer number of casualties was staggering. For days, the cries of the wounded echoed across the desolate landscape. The task of burying the dead fell to those who survived. It was a grim and overwhelming duty. The bodies were laid in shallow graves. Often there was no time for proper identification. Amidst the horror, a glimmer of hope emerged. For many enslaved people living in the South, the war brought a chance for freedom. They fled their plantations and sought refuge behind Union lines. These escaped slaves became known as Contraband. The Union Army welcomed them. They provided food, shelter, and protection. Contraband camps sprang up near Union lines. They were places of hope and uncertainty. Life was hard, but it was better than slavery. The Contraband were eager to help the Union cause. They served as cooks, laborers, and even soldiers. And at Cold Harbor, they played a vital role in burying the dead. The task of burying the dead fell heavily upon the Contraband. It was a gruesome and heartbreaking job, but they did not shy away from it. They saw it as their duty. They worked tirelessly, their hands raw and blistered. They carried the bodies to mass graves. They laid them to rest with whatever dignity they could muster. They did not discriminate between blue and grey. All were given a proper burial. The Contraband understood the finality of death. They had seen enough of it in their lives. They knew that these soldiers, regardless of which side they fought for, deserved a respectful end. Section 5. The weight of the shovel. Dignity and death. Each shovelful of dirt was heavy with meaning. It wasn't just soil they were moving, it was the weight of their past, their struggles, and their hopes for the future. Every time the shovel hit the ground, it echoed the silent cries of those who had suffered and the resilient spirit of those who had survived. The Contraband carried the weight of their own history on their shoulders. These men, who had once been enslaved, now found themselves in a position of solemn responsibility. Their tired expressions and worn clothing told stories of hardship and endurance. They were burying men who had fought for a country that had denied them their freedom. The graves of Civil War soldiers were not just resting places, they were symbols of a complex and painful history. The somber faces of the Contraband men reflected the gravity of their task. Yet they also understood that the Union victory offered them a chance for a better life. The sight of the Union flag waving in the wind brought a glimmer of hope. It was a promise of change, a beacon of a future where they could live as free men. With each burial, they buried a piece of the old world. The act of filling graves with dirt was more than a physical task. It was a symbolic gesture of letting go of a past filled with pain and oppression, a world where they were considered property. These images of slavery served as a stark reminder of the brutal reality they had endured. They were once seen as mere property, their lives dictated by the whims of their owners. They were burying it with the hope of a brighter future. As they looked towards the horizon, they envisioned a world where they could live with dignity and respect. The simple markers on the graves were not just memorials, they were symbols of a new beginning. The act of burial was a powerful symbol of their newfound freedom. It was a declaration that they were no longer bound by the chains of slavery. The solemn burial scenes were poignant reminders of their journey from bondage to freedom. They were no longer slaves forced to work the land. The empty fields, once a place of forced labor, now represented a space of opportunity and collaboration. Freedmen working together signified a community rebuilding itself. They were free men laying the dead to rest. In unity they found strength. The historical images of freedmen at burials showed men standing together not just as individuals, but as a collective force determined to honor the past and build a future filled with dignity and hope. Section 6. More than a task, a symbolic act of freedom. The burial of the dead at Cold Harbor was more than just a grim necessity. It was a moment that transcended the immediate horrors of the battlefield. Amidst the chaos and carnage, there was a profound need to honor those who had fallen, regardless of the side they fought for. It was a symbolic act, a gesture that went beyond the mere act of interment. It was a way to reclaim a sense of humanity in a time when humanity seemed lost. The soldiers who took on this task were not just burying bodies. They were making a statement about the value of life and the respect owed to every individual. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. In the face of unimaginable suffering and loss, these acts of burial were a way to assert that life, even in its end, held meaning. The resilience shown by these soldiers was not just physical but deeply emotional and spiritual, and it was a powerful reminder of the cost of war. Each grave was a stark symbol of the ultimate price paid by so many. The rows of wooden crosses and makeshift markers served as a somber reminder of the human cost of conflict, a cost that extended far beyond the battlefield. The Contraband, in their act of compassion and respect for the dead, transcended the horrors of war. These individuals, often former slaves, took on the solemn duty of burying the dead with a sense of reverence and humanity that stood in stark contrast to the brutality of the conflict. They acknowledged the shared humanity of both sides. In their actions, they recognized that the dead were not just soldiers of the Union or the Confederacy, but human beings who deserved dignity in death. This act of burial was a powerful statement of shared humanity and mutual respect. They recognized that beneath the uniforms were fathers, sons, and brothers. Each grave represented a family torn apart, a community in mourning. The act of burial was a way to honor these relationships and acknowledge the deep personal losses suffered by so many. Their actions served as a powerful indictment of the institution of slavery. By treating the dead with dignity, they were making a broader statement about the value of every human life, regardless of race or status. This was a quiet but profound act of defiance against a system that sought to dehumanize them. They showed that even in death there was dignity. The care and respect with which they buried the dead were a testament to their belief in the inherent worth of every individual. This dignity in death was a powerful counterpoint to the dehumanizing nature of war, and that even in the midst of war, there was room for compassion. These acts of kindness and respect were small beacons of hope in a time of darkness. They reminded everyone that even in the most trying times, the human capacity for compassion and empathy could shine through, offering a glimmer of hope for a more humane future. Section 7. Echoes of Cold Harbor, remembering the sacrifice. The Battle of Cold Harbor is long over, but the echoes of that bloody conflict still resonate today. The battlefield stands as a silent testament to the human cost of war. The sacrifice of those who fought and died there should never be forgotten. Nor should we forget the contributions of the Contraband. Their story is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can emerge. The Contraband's role in burying the dead is a testament to their strength and resilience. It is a story that deserves to be told and remembered. Section 8. The Unseen Scars, Trauma and Memory. The Contraband carried the weight of their experiences long after the smoke cleared at Cold Harbor. The sights and smells of death lingered in their minds. The trauma of war left an indelible mark on their souls. Many struggled to reconcile the horrors they witnessed with their newfound freedom. The memories of that time stayed with them, shaping their lives and the lives of their descendants. Their story is a reminder that the wounds of war run deep. They are not always visible, but they are always present. Section 9. A Shared Humanity Lessons from Cold Harbor. Cold Harbor stands as a stark reminder of the brutality of war. It is a story of courage, sacrifice, and loss. But it is also a story of hope and resilience. The Contraband story reminds us that even in the darkest of times, humanity can shine through. It reminds us that we are all connected and that we have a shared responsibility to build a better future. The lessons of Cold Harbor are as relevant today as they were over a century ago. We must never forget the sacrifices made on that blood-soaked ground, and we must strive to create a world where such sacrifices are never again necessary.